How are we all? I might ask that again. How are we all? Very good. That is fantastic. What I loved this morning was hearing the youth take the lead of music. We didn't have any drums, no kick, no nothing this morning. And they took the drum beat at one point. Is that correct? Was that led by you, Roy? No. Yeah, that's good, man. No, you've done well. All right, so let me start this morning with a rhetorical question. Hey, if you're visiting, you're just tuning in, my name's Robert. I'm one of the pastors here, and we feel absolutely thrilled to have you guys with us and look forward to getting to know you a little bit. If you're online, drop us a comment, message us. We'd love to get to know you. Otherwise, hey, don't rush off post this. I'd love to, I'd say shout you a coffee, but the coffees are free anyways. But I suppose they're still shouting. Can it still be shout? We'll shout you a coffee. Anyways, so I want to start this morning with this rhetorical question. Don't answer it because the person next to you will judge you, though the person next to you has done the same thing as well. Okay. So how many of you, no hands up, like just put your hands up in your mind, so to speak. How many of you have done this? That a phone call has come through and your phone's lying back up. You can't see who it is. And then you pick it up and you see who it is. And then you put it back down. What's that? Sorry, Rob. You put it back down because, like, you just started to watch a movie. You just sat down. There's no one home. You're by yourself. It's a relaxing day. And you just sat down to watch a movie or to watch something on Netflix. And then the phone rings and you pick it up and it's Chris. Chris has picked on me. I will pick on Chris. And you pick it up and it's that person. And it's a friend. It's a person that you know and you engage with, but you still put it back down. You don't end it. You don't press the button that kills it because you don't want them to know that they know then that you actually saw the call. You want to pretend that you didn't have the phone with you. This used to be easy when they're all landlines. You just take the phone off the hook and no one would bother you. But so you see the person on it and you're like, I am busy. I've got whatever it is going on. I want to watch this Netflix show. I just want to enjoy my coffee. I'm out in the garden doing some gardening. I'm pottering around. I'm going for a walk and like Chris has rang and you're like, oh, I like this person. But answering this, like, so I know if I answer this person, they're going to keep talking. Like it's not that person that just rings and says, hey, Rob, I just want to let you know that whatever's happening on Tuesday, thanks, bye. It's that person, hey, Rob, what's going on? Don't worry, I don't want to know about what's going on with you. I'm going to tell you everything that's going on with me, and we're going to talk about that for half an hour. Then we'll move on to what's you for 5 minutes, then back to something else. And they may not be like that person that's rude and obnoxious and only want to talk about themselves, but they just want to talk. And you're like, I'm just going to pretend that I haven't seen the phone call. I'm going to put it down because to be honest, it's just an inconvenient moment and I'd rather not. I'd just rather leave it alone or I just can't be bothered. I think we've all done that. Some of you will be much more holier than they are. That'd be me. And maybe you haven't, but I have done that. And look, there's no, for those of you that have done it, there is absolutely no judgments. Like we all have to have and we all need to have downtime at times where we just push things aside and that's fine. But so often honestly, if it's me, I'm just busy doing what it is that I want to do or engaging with what it is that I want to engage with. And I just can't be bothered with this conversation at the moment. I know I'm a pastor and I know I shouldn't talk like this and I know this shouldn't happen, but it does. And so I want to use that and leapfrog into this idea of just like we screen calls with people that we like, that we enjoy company with, we enjoy talking to, but just not at that particular time because it's inconvenient and we can't be bothered and take that and start pulling apart this idea, especially if you're a Christian. If you're a Christian this morning and you follow Jesus, and you profess that he is your Lord and Savior and you want to follow him and you want to engage with him, this is specifically for you because what we do is we do that similar thing of screening calls of people in our lives. We kind of screen different groups of people out of our lives as well. And so what we end up doing, and maybe again, I'm going to share something that you're all going to judge me for. Please don't, but yeah, I'm a human being. I don't only do this job. So and I'll explain this as far as screening people as well. I don't only do this job. I have other jobs outside of this job. I run my own business. My wife and I run a farmlet, and so we're busy people. And so my other business outside of this, I interact consistently with people. And the comment often comes up, like, is this the only thing that you do? And I try as best I can to answer it like this. No, it's not the only thing that I do. I'm also a pastor of a church. I also do this and answer it other ways. But then there's those moments, there's those times I'm packing up my tools into the back of the vehicle. I'm getting ready to escape, to drive away. Is this the only thing that you do? And I answer it in this way where I don't say that it isn't, and I don't say that it is. I've somehow subconsciously come up with a really crafty way of saying everything and nothing at all. And so they've got no idea. They think I've answered it, but I haven't. And then I get in the car and I close the door and I drive away. I'm like, what on earth is wrong with me? Like, why did you do that, Robert? Why did you do that? Why didn't you just say, no, there's other things that I do, like I pastor a church as well. Like, you had the best opportunity to share something else and not necessarily push the gospel down their throats, just to say, hey, I do something other than this as well, and I pastor a church. And then probably the next time there'll be other conversations come out of, like, Robert, why? Why did you just push that aside? And I'm still working it out. But I think, and I'm convinced, in my trying to muse this out, is it comes down to this, that it just feels inconvenient, or I can't be bothered at the time. And if I pull the thread a little bit more on that, I can't be bothered because, just like what we can't be bothered with the people outside of our lives or in our lives that are kind of on the peripheral that aren't Christians, at times we do the same thing, that maybe you're not answering whether you have another job or not, but you leave out this part of you that is fundamental, that you're a Christian, that you follow Jesus, that you go to church, that you worship him. And if I'm to answer for me, which is probably similar to you, is at some point subconsciously in our minds that we stop saying it because I know at some point, if I'm to develop a meaningful relationship with this person, there's going to be pushback. There's going to be something that they disagree with about my theology, my belief system. They're going to challenge me on something. There's going to be some kind of debate, not fierce debate, just pushback. Like, they're going to question me. Well, what's your thoughts on gay marriage? What's your thoughts on having sex before marriage? What's your thoughts on abortion? What's your thought? And then there's pushback, and then there's dialogue, and there's discussion. Like, I'm not sure if I can be overly bothered with it. And so we end up trying to avoid these things. We end up trying to avoid these conversations because it's inconvenient and I just can't be bothered. Dale Crisp, I think it is, Cripe, pastor, business mentor, he puts it like this. And to lead into it, he highlights this thought that Christianity, at least in the West, Christianity used to be the leading culture. It was the one that all cultures kind of followed, and it was the leading culture. But if there was a war, so to speak, a culture war, Christianity is losing. And the world is winning as far as the world's culture is moving forward, and our culture as Christians is dropping out. Make sense? Makes sense, okay. And he says it like this: the more we lose culture, the more as Christians we lose culture, the more we do this, the more my sanctuary, being this, the place that we come to worship is meant to be a sanctuary of worship, a sanctuary that's set apart, a sanctuary of holiness where we come and we adore on the King of Kings and we worship him. And that's church, and that's faith, and that's God. It's meant to be a sanctuary. But he says the more we lose culture, the more that sanctuary ends up becoming my sanctuary. Make sense? The more we lose culture, the more my sanctuary becomes my literal sanctuary that I'm trying to use to protect me from the culture that's out there that I just can't be bothered dealing with. I just can't be bothered with the pushback, the dialogue. I can't be bothered with the debates. I don't want that. And so the more I start losing that cultural war and realizing that the people around me that aren't like me, at some point, if I enter into a deep and meaningful relationship with them, they're going to push back on me because I find that uncomfortable and we find that uncomfortable. Our subconscious reaction is that the sanctuary starts becoming the place that I'm wanting to go to feel protected. I'm wanting faith to be this oasis that I retreat to, that just aligns with all my beliefs and systems and thoughts. That church, that it's not with those people that are outside of that challenge me, that debate with me. We might debate on theological matters, but as far as morality, no, I don't want that. I want to have this retreat, this refuge where I retreat to. Dale goes on. He says the problem with this is it becomes a flywheel, this perpetuating flywheel that continues on. A flywheel where it says the more that we lose our culture over and over again, the more my sanctuary becomes my sanctuary. The more I bunker down, the less I want to have those engagements, conversations, meaningful relationship with someone outside of my world. Because I want to feel a safe place. I want a safe place. I want comfort. I don't want the pushback. I don't want the challenges. I don't want the debates. I don't want the questions. I just want a sanctuary of worship where I can just come and worship God and not think. Be it at church or be it at home in the mornings. Be it with the people that we mix with. And so we end up as Christians associating more with Christians than we do non-Christians. We end up associating with non-Christians in a transactional manner. But our deep and meaningful relationships solely end with Christians. And that is the opposite of Jesus' ministry. The complete opposite. In fact, Jesus did this. He came to build a church. He came to build a church with this idea that the church is a group of people inviting outsiders to become insiders. The church that Jesus was wanting to build. The group of people that Jesus was wanting to rally around his mission was birthed out of this idea that he wanted to grow and send out a group of people that were inviting outsiders to become insiders. And so some of the language that's helped shape this, because this has very much been my theology for a long time, and it's very much been the theology that shaped us as a church of this idea that Jesus is there trying to invite outsiders to become insiders. And some of that language comes from, and we're not going to go through the story, but I'll just highlight it. In Luke 5, it's my favorite story out of all of Jesus' ministry, perhaps all of the Bible. There's this conversation that Jesus has with a group of Pharisees, and just before that, he's called this guy called Levi. He ends up being called Matthew, to come follow him, to become one of his disciples and follow along with him. And this guy, he's a sinner of sinners. No one likes him. No one likes him, but Jesus invites him to become one of his followers, and then Levi invites Jesus to his place to have a meal, to have a dinner party. And the story says that Levi's there, tax collectors are there, and all these other filthy, rotten sinners. And I love how the Message puts it in Luke 5. The Pharisees come to Jesus' disciples saying, like, why do you guys, you're eating and dining with tax collectors, sinners, and notorious sinners. And in the Message, it uses this language. It says, such scum. Jesus is interacting with scum. Why? And so Jesus, he pipes up and he poses this question to them, which is ultimately, I think, a resemblance of all of Jesus' ministry. And I think what he wants us to do as well. He asks them this question: who needs a doctor? The healthy or the sick? And Jesus says, answering that rhetorical question for him, he says, I'm here inviting outsiders to become insiders. I'm here inviting those outside to become insiders, to discover a lifestyle, a life of change. I'm inviting these people that you call outsiders as insiders, which begs this idea, the church, you and I, are supposed to be a group of people inviting outsiders to become insiders. Looking for people, inviting people, bringing people in, engaging with people, connecting with people, looking for people to have deep and meaningful relationships with that do not align with your moral compass. That's what we see Jesus do over and over and over again. In fact, Luke goes on and he records this story in Luke chapter 15, where Jesus is doing just exactly the same thing. It says this: tax collectors and other notorious sinners. Everyone say notorious sinners. Notorious sinners. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often did this. They came to listen to Jesus teach. They came to Jesus and they listened to him teach. But here's the thing, right? The tax collectors, no one liked them. We get it. No one still does. Tax collectors and then other notorious sinners. And we still have the same dilemmas today. They had dilemmas then. But and this is a judgmental question, and I want you to muse on it and ponder on it and come up with an idea. So what would you determine today as a notorious sin? Who are the notorious sinners today? Because different churches, different people from different theology end up branding different things as notorious sinners. And here's the thing with the notorious sinners. It's not just that we're calling that's a sin. No, I'm not. We are not having anything to do with that. That is so bad. That is so bad. And it's so bad, God doesn't want anything to do with them either until they repent. Because that was very much the take and the opinion and the thoughts of the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the teachers of the religious law, the church, the Christian leaders, the church at the time. That was their thoughts. And so the question for you is, who are the notorious, not the who are, perhaps what is the notorious sin or sinners in your life? For them and perhaps for us today, it's still the same. It'd be the prostitutes, it'd be the drug dealers, the thieves, the adulterers. In different traditions, in different churches, it becomes the divorcees. The divorcees that get married because they're committing adultery, and that's absolutely horrid and sinful in some places. That's not here, but that's some places. In other places, it looks like it's the LGBTQ plus community. That are the notorious sinners. Nothing to do with. You can come up with your own list. I don't know what it is, but Jesus, it says this. It says tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to Jesus to listen to him teach. And then it goes on and it says this. This made the Pharisees and the teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. He was eating with the notorious sinners. He was sitting down. Sharing a meal with them. He allowed them to cook for him. Oh my gosh. We find it a little bit humorous. But if we insert ourselves into the picture, so many of us could answer what is a notorious sin, and I'll have nothing to do with that notorious sinner because that's my theology. So many of us, myself included, have pushed people aside because I can't stand their lifestyle. It is deplorable to me. But Jesus was sitting, eating, dining, teaching, engaging with those people. He was connecting, doing relationship with outsiders. One of the things we've been trying to do really deliberately since basically Sage and I took over this church is we have two things that we major on. We have a church service. If you haven't worked it out, church service is on right now. And we do small groups. We don't do anything else. Every now and then there'll be other stuff added in. And I know a lot of other churches have a lot of other programs and different things that they do. And from time to time we add on other things, but we don't consistently do that for this reason. Number one, I want all of us to have a life outside of church. For two reasons. I want you to have downtime. I want you to have a life and enjoy life rather than being bogged down with the busyness of church. But here's the second and main thing. If you are that tied up with doing everything church, you have no time in actively following Jesus' example and connecting with people outside of the church. We're meant to be a group of people inviting outsiders to become insiders. You cannot do that unless you sit down and have a meal with them. unless you sit down and have a meal with them. This made the Pharisees and the teachers of religious law complain. They were angry, irritated, frustrated. So Jesus does this. He tells them this story. In fact, he tells them 3 stories. We're going to major on 1 story. The 2 stories before this, and it's all talking about highlighting the same thing. The 2 stories before this was that he talks about this story about the lost coin. Then he tells them a story about the lost sheep. And then the last story, a whole lot of you will know, it's a story about the lost son or the prodigal son. And so they're asking and they're wondering and they're complaining, they're upset. Why would you associate with these people? And so Jesus starts telling them this story that, hey, you know what? I am wanting to answer your question. Why do I associate with such notorious sinners, such scum? People that you don't like, people that you despise. Why do I associate with the very person that you'd never be seen dead with at a dinner table? This is why, he says. He says this. He says, there's a father and he has 2 sons. There's an older son and there's a younger son. And this guy, this father, he's rich. He's a big landowner. He's a big business owner. He's got a lot of things. He's got a lot of wealth, and the younger son comes to the father and he says, I want to do this. I want my share of your estate. I want my inheritance now before you die. And this is like taboo. You don't do this. And the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law, they're listening to Jesus tell this story, and they're like, this son is a bad guy. Like, you don't do that. You do not, what he's saying is that you're worth more to me dead than alive. I'd rather a relationship with your money than you. I don't want anything to do with you. I'd rather you dead so I can enjoy my life. Dad, I'm just waiting for you to die. I'm waiting for you to croak until so I can get everything that I want. So he says, I want my share of the inheritance. And the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law, they would have been thinking that, this son's deplorable. He's a notorious sinner. But equally so, they would have started asking and thinking, or at least pondering the question, what on earth is wrong with the dad? Like, how's he raised a kid that is so disrespectful? How's he raised a kid that is so unholy, ungodly? How's he raised a kid like that? And so the story goes on that what dad does is he decides he'll do this. I'm going to sell some stuff up. I'm going to liquidate some things. I'm going to pull some money out of the bank. I'm going to do all that so I can give him half of what it is that he would get if I was to die today. And you can imagine, as they would have imagined, that, my gosh, this would have angered the older son, because that meant liquidating some things. There wasn't as much machinery, perhaps, as there was before to be able to work and do everything that it was that he was trying to do and outwork to run the family operation. And so he had to sacrifice and perhaps work harder in order for this other brother to get this benefit of life. And so dad does all this. And the other son, he packs up and he heads off, the story says, to a distant land. And when he gets there, the story says that he squanders his wealth on wild living. Basically, he's enjoying his life. He takes all his inheritance, all his money, all his coins, anything I can get my hands on that's going to bring some kind of enjoyment into my life. That's what I'm going to do to enjoy, and I'm going to spend and spend. And he doesn't think he's ever going to run out of money. Just like that person that wins the lottery is convinced that money is going to see them through to the day that they die. But you guys know the statistics. And the statistics for the lottery winners are the same as the younger son here. For lottery winners, you know the statistics. They normally end up worse off afterwards they've won the lottery than they were before, because they've never actually learned how to handle money. And this younger son, he's arrogant and he's proud and he's all this. And the same thing for him. He ends up bottoming out nothing. Nothing. He's got nothing left. And so he's like, I've got to do something here. And so he goes and gets a job. He gets a job feeding pigs. And when Jesus starts telling them that, the Pharisees, these religious people, they hear that and they're like, pigs, nah. Because for the Jewish people, pigs equaled unclean. Pigs equaled unholy. Pigs equaled deplorable. Well, this guy's definitely not a Jew. He's definitely not a godly person, definitely not a Christian. We're definitely going to put him in this category of he is a notorious sinner. Like, you would not associate with him. Again, he's engaging with pigs. The younger son, he gets so hungry because he's not getting paid well, he's not getting looked after. He gets so hungry, he starts looking at the slops that the pigs are fed, and he starts thinking to himself, like, that looks good. I'm not getting enough food. That looks good, so I am going to start eating that. And so he starts feeding himself from the pig's food. And again, the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law, they're like, this is so bad. This is so unholy. And they're realizing this, and they're connecting dots, realizing that this Jesus character claims to be from God. And so they're connecting dots, that they're suggesting that this story is about how we are, or a person is, and God. And they're already starting to work out, probably from the beginning, because he's told 3 stories of the third now, that this father probably represents something to do with God. And then they're probably listening to it and like, this kid, he's done. There's no way back from this. He's like a tax collector. He's like that prostitute. He's that person that's got same-sex attraction. Deplorable, push aside, won't go near. Nuh-uh. They're thinking to themselves and saying. The younger son in the story, he gets so hungry. The pig slops aren't doing it for himself. And he starts thinking to himself, like, there's something amiss here. There's something wrong. There's something wrong, because even back home, my father, with his hired servants, he looked after them. They always had food. They always had shelter. They were always comfortable. And so he comes to this idea. He says, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to Dad. I'm going to say this, Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as your hired servant. He comes up, with a plan, with an idea. He scripts it out. This is what I'm going to say to Dad when I get there. Basically, I'm going to beg. I don't want to be your son anymore. I realize that opportunity is gone. But I want to be taken care of by you as just a hired servant. I'm happy to be a slave because you look after your slaves well. And the story goes on that he starts heading home, and it says this: so he returned home to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming, begging the idea that Dad was watching, Dad was looking, Dad was what? Waiting. Dad was on the lookout, waiting for something. And Dad saw him coming from a long way off, and filled with love and compassion, he ran. And the Pharisees, the religious leaders, are tearing their hair out now. Like, no way. There's no way that he runs. Like, okay, I can get the love and compassion maybe because that's his son. But he's not going to run. He's not going to run because a Jewish person doesn't run. A Jewish person of any honor, any standing, he doesn't run. You don't do that. This is not right. And the story says that filled with love and compassion, he starts running. I don't know how. No, I'm not going to say that. I'll get in trouble. He ran to his son. He embraced him and he kissed him. But the other thing that I bet that they're grappling with and struggling with, and I think could be a struggle for us, if we thought too deeply about it, is that Jesus is connecting the dots between this is how God interacts with sinners versus, in a minute, how the religious leaders interact with sinners. And they're realizing that Jesus is using Dad as the example of God. And they're thinking to themselves, Jesus is just saying that God is running. And they're going through in their minds like, God doesn't run. If you reflect over, like for those of you that know your scripture well, God never runs. In the garden, he's walking. In the garden, in the start of the Bible, in the Garden of Eden, when he's interacting with Adam and Eve, he is walking through the garden. You get to Jesus stories, and what do you read Jesus doing? He's walking. He's walking here, he's walking there. Jesus being this God incarnate, God coming in flesh and dwelling amongst us, he's only ever walking. When he decides to go across water, what does he do? He walks. When a storm turns up and he's sitting in a rowboat, it's bigger than a rowboat, but you get it. What does he do? He sleeps. He's not concerned. He's not worried. He's happy. He's chill. No matter what's going on, he's walking or he's sleeping. Like he's pretty relaxed. And then he's saying this, Jesus connecting the Father with God. This is the only time in all of Scripture you see God run. And who's he running to? The most unholy person he could describe. God's walking consistently until it comes to an outsider, then God is running towards the people on the outside. Simply because God wants this, Jesus wants this, he wants us to be a church, or he wants the church to be this, a community of people, a group of people inviting outsiders to become insiders. The only place you see God run is right here towards an outsider. The Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law, they're struggling, they're uncomfortable with this. And the story goes on. He says this, the son goes through his scripted line, I've sinned. I've done bad, deplorable things. I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Like, I just want you to take me in. But his father does this. He says he ignores everything that the son just says. He doesn't highlight, doesn't rebuke, doesn't correct and say, yeah, you did really bad. You need to work for me for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years to repay, and then you'll be good. He just says this. He says, hey, to the servants, I want you to do this. Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. And again, the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law, they're listening to this and like, this is ridiculous. This is unheard of. This is uncalled for. You wouldn't do this. And we in Western culture don't get this middle part, the power of it and all the details in it, because the finest robe wasn't just something that everyone had in their closet. The finest robe was reserved for the owner of the household, that he would put on if he was going to a good event, a big event, that would kind of highlight and say that I am the big deal, I am the owner of this place, I'm the manager, I'm overseeing everything. And he's like, go and get that robe that is reserved for me. It'd be like the King of England, here's my crown, I am giving it to you. And he's like, go and get that thing that's only reserved for me, that only ever comes out on special occasions. Go and get that. I want you to do that. But while you're there, I want you to get two other things. I want you to get sandals. Because sandals, he needs to wear sandals. He's barefoot at the moment. The only people that are barefoot, they are the slaves. They are the servants. He is not a slave. He is not a servant. He is my son. He must have shoes. But don't forget the ring. Because the ring, for those of you who studied history, will know that people of prominence had a ring with a mark on it that they could stamp, wax as a seal. And it's like, you need to get my ring because he's going to carry my authority. He's going to be able to make decisions. He's going to be able to buy things, sell things, trade things, look after things with my stamp of approval because he's my son. And they're wrestling with this and they're struggling with this. Just like perhaps if you were to think through, like I said before, what is the most notorious, deplorable sin you could think of? That's this person here. What the story is trying to highlight, that is this person here. And so the father says all this and he says, all right, guys, go and get the most succulent, fattest calf we can get. We're going to celebrate. We're going to slaughter it, and then there's going to be a party. I want you to invite everyone. And so they start the party, they start the festival, and the older son, he's still out in the field. And it says this, meanwhile, the older son was working in the fields, working. And when he returned home, it's been all day. He's been out working a slave. When he returned home, he hears music and dancing in the house. And he's like, I'm a little bit confused. And he pulls out the iCal. So I had them back then. And he's like, there's nothing on this. There's no party. I'm a bit confused. I can't remember. Dad and I had breakfast this morning. We talked about the happenings of the day. There's no party mentioned. I don't know what's going on. This is a big deal. He got that. He's got Swifties here. Swifties playing. It's a big party. I can't remember this. And so he calls one of the servants. He's like, Can you please tell me what's going on? Your brother came back. My brother? No. Yeah, he came back. But why is there a celebration? Because Dad was just kicking back Ed and sending. Oh no, that's the celebration for your brother. He's like, hang on, slow down, explain this. You need to highlight, like, I'm so lost. And he's like, yeah, your brother's come back. Your brother's returned. And Dad's like, we need to celebrate because he's come back. No, it can't be right. Yeah, no, it is. And so Dad's killed the fattened calf. You're kidding me. No, I'm not. The servant continues to respond to him and highlight this. He said, in fact, he's given him, sorry to tell you, but he's given him the robe. And he's like, that's my robe when Dad dies. That's meant to be given to me. Yeah, he's given him that. He's given him sandals. Oh, well, I can deal with that. And he's given him the ring. He's like, the ring! That's meant to be passed to me to be able to lord it over all this when Dad dies. He's like, this mutt has already taken his inheritance, and now he's come back and now he's taking my inheritance. So what it feels like should be my inheritance. So he's like, I am not going in, and refuses to go in. And so the father does this. The older brother was angry and he wouldn't go in. And the father comes and he tries to beg him and asks him, come outside. And he says this, all these years, this is the older brother talking to the father, I have slaved for you and I've never once refused to do a single thing that you told me to do. I'm a good worker. And this is right here, Jesus connecting the Pharisees' role with serving God. Highlighting to them that I am admitting that you've been serving God. In your role, you've been serving God. You've been trying to do it as best as you can. And there's disagreements in how you've done it, but we're not arguing that. But I agree that you've been serving God. And I've never refused to do anything you told me, the older son says. And in all that time, you never even gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. But yet, when this son of yours separates him from family, he's your son, but he's not our family. When this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. And Jesus is using this story, trying to answer this question, this struggle that the Pharisees have got of why is Jesus dining with the most deplorable, notorious sinners? And that is still the same question that we struggle with today. Maybe not you. But if I'm honest, I know I struggle with it at times. Why is that person engaging with that person? There's something wrong. And when that happens, there's a check coming into my spirit. Have I missed Jesus' ministry? Jesus' ministry, or what he was wanting to do and wanting to raise and wanting to build, was a group of people, a church. A church being a group of people that was deliberate in inviting outsiders to become insiders. And so he's telling them this story, telling the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law this story, connecting the Father to be God and them as the older brother. And in doing that, wanting to highlight there's a difference between how God sees and interacts and what he does with people versus how they connect, interact, and engage with people. And then what he's wanting to do at the same time is he's not wanting to leave it at that. Because it's not meant to be this story of judgment of him pointing his finger at the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law and telling them that they're so bad and rotten. He's wanting to, at the same time, beg them the question of, or realistically highlight this idea that you get to choose which person it is that you are in the story, how you act in regards to these notorious sinners that I'm engaging with. And which I think, just like Jesus was wanting to use a story to whet their minds and appetites, it's the same question for you and I today is who are you? When you reflect on this story, who are you? When you reflect on a story like this and you take that and you think about the notorious sins that are connected with people or people are connected with that you know in your world, which person are you in your interactions with them? Are you the father or are you the older brother? Are you the father that's operating out of love and compassion, that's wanting to invite them and bring them in? Or are you the older brother and is just offended by the life that they are leading? Who is it that you are? Because I'm convinced of this, that we are meant to be people that are following Jesus' example and are being deliberate at inviting outsiders to become insiders. Not taking our sanctuary, this place of worship, and trying to confine it into this place that protects me and my own and my way of thinking, and I don't want to share it with anyone else because I don't want the backwards and forwards and the challenges and the debates and everything that comes with that. So what I love about Jesus' ministry is that I bet that he would have had to deal with those debates and challenges and questions that would have come from people that were living a life that was seen as deplorable. But he didn't shy away from it. So who are you? Who are you? Perhaps the question that follows on from that is, if we're to be the dad in the story, what does that look like? What does that look like? I think the answer is found in what the father does. It says this. We read it before. While he was still a long way off, his father did this. He saw him coming and he ran. He saw him coming and then he ran, meaning this, that he was on the lookout. I said it before. He was on the lookout for his son. And when he saw him, he started running towards him. Which I think is exactly the same thing as what God is asking, encouraging, challenging, leading us to do. Be on the lookout. Not determining who's right and wrong. Be on the lookout. Who is it that is coming my way? And when you see them, run towards them. The question being this: who is coming into your life from outside of your life? Who is coming into your life that is outside of your life? Being this: they're not a part of my belief system structure. They don't think like me, believe like me, behave like me, but they're coming into my life. I associate with them, I connect with them, but I need to do this. I need to welcome them into my life, engage with them, sit down with them, have a meal with them, share a meal with them. This person could be the person that you go to the gym with and you train with. It could be someone, it could be a co-worker at work that you engage with. It could even be a family member that you keep doing that because they're not right. There's something wrong with them. They're going to drag me down if I engage with them. I'm going to push them away. Who is it that is coming into your life from outside of your life? If we're to follow Jesus' example, we need to be Christians, and specifically, obviously, talking to Christians this morning. If we honestly want to follow Jesus' example, then we need to be people looking, waiting, seeing who it is that God is bringing into our life, and when we see them, we run towards them and invite them in. Not judge them, not tell them everything that's wrong with them. Love them. Love them. Love them. Simply because of this. We have a mission as a church to lead people in a growing relationship with Jesus. But that doesn't happen if it doesn't start with us making a deliberate choice to be inviting outsiders to become insiders. I want to be an individual, and I want us to be a church of people. I want us to be a group of people that is making our job, our mission, to invite outsiders to become insiders. Let me pray. Father, I mess this up so often. Like I shared earlier, God, there's times where I've got the best opportunity to be able to connect and engage and share, and I don't. God, no, I want to start by saying sorry. Continue to confront me and build me and grow me, Jesus. To have a heart that is just like your heart, Father, that has a heart for people on the outside, Jesus, that is willing to endure the inconvenience, that is willing to endure the I can't be bothered, that is willing to endure the pushback, the difficult questions, the challenges, everything that comes with that, and willing to endure that in order that we just want to have relationship with people, with the people that you came to die for. And that doesn't end with the people that are standing or sitting in the four walls of this building with us, but that extends to the people that we interact with. So God, I want to pray that you bring to mind people in our lives that we can be inviting into our lives to sit down and have a meal with them, regardless of their lifestyle, regardless of how they live, regardless of what we think about it. God, fill us with a measure of grace, Jesus, the measure of grace that you see people, Father, and confront us and challenge us to live out of that place. Help us see people just like you see people. And this week, Jesus, I want to pray that you bring to mind the people that you're bringing into our life, Father, and that we can reciprocate that by inviting them in Jesus' name. Amen. So, what's happening in 2 weeks? Easter. Easter's going to be good. I am thoroughly looking forward to it. It's going to be a celebration. We are going to celebrate. We're going to have a barbecue. It's going to be fantastic. I don't want to go into everything that we're going to be doing and ruin the surprise, but it'll be good. Hey, how about you head out, grab a tea or coffee. There's cards on your seats. And those cards say you are invited. That's not for you. You're invited to Easter. You're here. I'd like to think that you know that. Take that. Who can you give that to and remind them that, hey, why don't you come with me, join me this Easter. Head out, and we'll see you next week.
You made the rain, so when it falls on me, should I complain?